fundamental task in almost every court process for self-represented litigants to be able to meaningfully participate in their case. And let's think about it. If a person is not able to get a form filled out due to a disability, a language barrier, or a literacy issue, they cannot even get started with their case. So what are some of the common barriers that we see here in New Mexico that people face when they have to fill out a court form? They have lack of familiarity with court processes and legal language, limited English proficiency, disabilities. This could be blindness or low vision, color blindness, hearing impairments, cognitive impairments, and motor disabilities. Also, low literacy. New Mexico is not an exception to really a nationwide trend that we see literacy that is not can't read or write. Yes. And also the digital divide, right? People who may not have access to the internet or have access to a computer. Yet some of our processes heavily depend on using some sort of digital device. So these are some of the common barriers. So let's take a look at how we addressed these barriers. So we have multilingual forms and filings, and this means that forms can be filled out in languages other than English, and we provide translation services for these. And particularly in the area of domestic violence, domestic relations, we also see a lot of translation requests coming for case-specific or court-specific situations, guardianship, conservatorship, landlord-tenant, and eviction. And in terms of the languages that we provide these forms in, we have Spanish, Navajo, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Arabic. In terms of the format in which these bilingual forms are provided, well, they are bilingual, so they are in English and the other language. And this really facilitates communication between the parties and making sure that if we have a party that is LEP and a party that is English speaking, that both of them are on equal footing, and we can ensure full participation and access to forms and documents. We also provide scribing services, which is the focus of today's presentation, which is, again, assisting individuals in filling out court forms. And we have a special certification for individuals who are bilingual, court staff who are bilingual in the New Mexico judiciary, and they provide language access services outside the courtroom. We have a training program that's 10 weeks, and folks go through that program and eventually become certified, then they maintain their CEUs, and they're added to a roster of certified bilingual staff. And they are amazing at providing access at first point of contact at the clerk's office, self-help centers, etc. And also courthouse kiosks, and we'll see how we integrate these services, right? So going back to forms, I just wanted to give you an example of our bilingual forms. We have Navajo on the left, we have Arabic in the middle, and we have Chinese on the right. So we were just talking about scribing services. What is scribing? Well, this is a trained individual. Could be a court staff, or it could be a volunteer that can read the form out loud to a person, and then the self-represented litigant will be able to have access to that form because they'll be able to understand what it says. And then the court staff writes down the court user's answers and reads the answers back to the individual just to confirm that that's exactly what the person wants to say. So the court staff, they're not meant to provide any legal advice. They're not meant to tell the individual what to write in, but just to facilitate that very fundamental function of being able to understand what the form says and being able to put in writing what the litigant is saying in the litigant's exact words. So again, who is it for? Limited English proficient individuals, individuals with low literacy, as Renee was saying, people who cannot read and write, people with disabilities, and populations with limited access to the internet or and a computer. So how does the process work? So typically a person will fill out a statement of need. They'll do that with the court staff to be able to identify that there's a need and schedule maybe an appointment. It depends. This varies from court to court, but it could be that they need to schedule an appointment. And then the staff will assess, for example, okay, so this person has a literacy barrier, but also has a language barrier. So I need an interpreter. I need to bring in an interpreter. And it could be a volunteer. In the case of the Second Judicial District, they do work with volunteers from a literacy organization who actually do the writing in the, who actually write the responses provided by the court user in the form. But again, it could be just an interpreter that appears over the phone and facilitates that communication between the court staff and the person needing the service. So what happens during the session? So the volunteer will read the form out loud, will write down the exact answer provided by the court user. The volunteer will not provide legal advice or personal opinions. They'll maintain confidentiality. And they'll also document the need in a needs assessment, assessment spreadsheet that we provide to the courts. And this is really important to us because it's a way of identifying where the needs are, what kind of assistance we can provide, what our additional resources are needed to make this successful. And I think there was a question or comment. Are these volunteers standing by at the courthouse, or do they have to be scheduled in? That's a really good question. No, we tried having volunteers be on standby, but we really couldn't meet the demand. I mean, we couldn't sync the demand for the service with the provision of volunteers. So what we do now is the courts that do use volunteers, they just schedule that ahead of time. It goes without saying that court staff doing this process typically saves time, just because you're removing that scheduling piece and all that. All right. And so we did two pilots. A few years ago, we started with one in the 9th and with one in the 2nd, as I said. And at the 2nd, we started with the domestic violence division because we thought, well, that's really where the need is. But then it expanded to self-help center, to the self-help center. In the 9th, it's quite interesting. They've been using this service a lot for jurors who need to fill out the questionnaire. And remember, we talked about people kind of not having access to the internet, not having access to a computer, and all of a sudden, you know, they need to show up for jury duty and they need to fill out that questionnaire. So different uses of this service, different needs, but it all helps people access our courts, which is really our focus. And so with those two pilots, what we wanted to do is really to see how we could expand this to other areas of the state. And for that, we realized that, at the time it was just me going to the courts and kind of training staff, and then it was Peggy, and it's like, okay, we need to find a way to standardize the training so that everybody, all court staff, are aware of how the services are provided. We make sure that nobody's providing legal advice, which of course they already know because they're court staff. And so anyway, so we really wanted to standardize the training, the community resources that we provide, so that we let the community know that these services are available. And so as a result, we secured funding to work with the National Center for State Courts and receive technical assistance to develop these materials. And this is an explainer video that basically tells the public that these services, well, first it tells them what they are, and then that these services are available. So I just wanted to play the video, and if the sound is not good, I'll just post the link. But just let me know. I just wanted to show you a little bit of the work that we've done.
I don't think it's giving sound, Paula.
It is not? Okay. So what I'll do is I will actually, Twyla, the email that you send out with the materials, it has a link to this video, and I'd like to encourage you to watch it because it really explains to the public what these services are for and how they're provided and how to request them and all that. And then these materials are provided to the court so that they can use them and make them fit within their core process to provide the scribing services. Okay. So this is a multilingual flyer that provides general information about scribing and language access services. And it's very basic. Typically, people will be able to read at a certain basic level, but it's when it gets to actually filling out a court form or having sort of a higher register of the language that they're going to be struggling with, right? So, so this is one example, and that QR code takes them to our ADA page on the New Mexico Judiciary's website, which I believe has been shared with you as well, and you're welcome to use all the materials that we have there to make sure that we provide proper accommodations for people with disabilities. This are, well, this is a trifold actually. It's for community outreach, and it's the front and back of the trifold. Again, it tells people in very simple, plain language what kind of service we provide and how we can help them. And we have this in English and Spanish, of course. We also prepared some public service announcements about the availability of scribing services. We have them in English, Spanish, and Navajo. Especially with the Navajo population, we thought it was important to have a PSA that could be, for example, played on the radio, because that is an accessible way in which people can learn about the services and the assistance that's provided at the court level. Let me see. Okay. And that was Navajo, and it was just letting people know. Anyway, you get a feel for what these look like. And we have it in Spanish, of course. So again, going back to the pilots, we started in the 9th and in the 2nd. The 9th is a relatively low volume court. The scribers are judicial specialists and language access specialists. They're amazing, and they're able to combine that skill set of being bilingual, but also being able to assist an individual with a form, right? So that's true access to our forms and to that initial step, right? So priority areas, 80% was for potential jurors who were not able to access the juror questionnaire because they didn't have a computer or internet access. Remember, in some counties, we have up to 70% of the people who do not have an internet subscription. So services like these are very, very important to that population as well. And also about 20% was for individuals with limited English proficiency, with a disability in domestic violence and domestic relations cases. In the 2nd, it was different, of course. It's a high volume court. And they worked with Read West volunteers and court interpreters as well, because there's more volume for LEPs there, along with deaf individuals who may also need the assistance of an American Sign Language interpreter. And the priority area there was the Self-Help Center. So that is a wrap for the first initiative. And I was wondering if you have any questions on this before we move on to the kiosk.
Paula, this is Lily here at the 3rd Judicial District.
Hi, Lily.
Hi, I was just wondering, do you know when that'll start in the other courts?
So the Supreme Court, thank you for asking that question, Lily, and I hope you're doing well. Right. So the Supreme Court approved the expansion of the program back in, I think it was before the holidays. So our ADA coordinator has been working with the different districts to expand these services to. So I'll definitely tell her to reach out to you and give you more information. But I know that there's interest, and she's been working on this with several other districts.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Renee says, thank you for the overview on Scribing. Metro has been providing the service, and Renee, you're a star at this. Do you want to add anything? Okay, all is going well. Well, Renee is she actually picked the name for Clara, our avatar, now also kiosk. And her thought behind that was that it was Clara, which means, it's a nod to the Spanish word claro, meaning clear, and Clara is the female for Clara, and clear is kind. So I thought that was fantastic. We all thought it was a brilliant name for her. So here's Clara. And Clara, again, started as an avatar on our Language Access website. She speaks Spanish, Navajo, and English, and now moved to a different platform, which is an AI kiosk. And so what you see here is a kiosk. This one is at the 1st Judicial District, And instead of me telling you what she does, I thought I would play a little video for you to see it firsthand.
Hey, Paula, we can't hear it. There's no sound.
Okay. All right. Not sure what to do about it because I have everything to a maximum, but I think if you got my PowerPoint, the video is there, and it'll show you different capabilities. So I will explain. I was trying not to explain, but I will explain how she works. So she is an AI avatar. And when I say I truly mean it. She relies on natural language processing, which is the branch of artificial intelligence. And she gets smarter through interacting with the public. So, for example, you can ask her a question like, where do I go for jury duty? Or where's Judge so-and-so's courtroom? Or how do I get a divorce? And we can all ask these questions in many different ways. And it's through those interactions that she starts understanding how there could be three people asking about the same thing, but in different ways. So that's the AI component. But basically, a person can ask how I want to get a divorce. She will provide some options, filling out a divorce form, dissolution of marriage form, or the packet, or any information that we have on how the process works, and then the user can select what they need, and so on. So here is a screenshot of the forms module. So if we go back, you'll probably see here, you're able to see my screen, right? It says forms. That's one of the modules, right? So I would tap on the forms module, or just ask about forms. And she'll take me here. And here I can browse the different forms that are available. And let me see. Yeah, I can select whichever form I want. And then she's going to give me two options, whether I want this form emailed to my email account, or whether I want to go and pick it up at the clerk's office. So that's for forms. We also have maps and directories, which basically tell the user where they are and where they need to go within the building, which is a very common question. Like, I have a hearing with so-and-so. Sorry. Another common question has to do with, I have a hearing. So if you ask her, I have a hearing today, she'll provide a list that is tied to data exchange, and it will show me the hearings for the day. And then I can also type in my name and select the hearing. And then she will pop a map so that I know how to get to my hearing within the courthouse. I'm not sure this will work either. I'll just give it a little try. And this is the user interface in Spanish. We are working on having her also be able to understand, do voice recognition in Spanish. She's able to speak Spanish. The voice recognition part, it's a different technology, ties in all the AI component. So that's coming next. Let's see.
Paula, there's no sound again.
Okay. All right. Well, I think it's also in your packet in your email. And again, these are all forms that are in bilingual format. Remember, we talked about tying in all these initiatives. The forms are in bilingual format. If I'm not able to read English, I'll get them in that language. I can get them emailed to myself, or I can go pick them up. And this is another video that I have for today, but given that I'm not able to play the audio, I won't go into that. Here's my contact information, also the contact information for our ADA Title II coordinator. And I hope this was interesting. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Or if you have any questions now, I'll be happy to address them.
Thank you, Paula. Unless there's some questions. Cheryl's asking in the chat if Clara's going to be available for Metro Court.
We can make a Clara kiosk available for you, Renee. For you and you only. Absolutely. We'll be happy to work with your court to provide a kiosk. Something that I didn't, I mean, it's in the demo. If you go to the demo, I mean, you deserve the Clara kiosk more than anybody. You came up with her name. So I was gonna say something that I couldn't show you is the remote capability that it has. We call it telepresence. So say that you go in front of a kiosk and you can't find the information you need. The court can add, it's not, I mean, it's a built-in capability. Not all courts have it, but you could enable it, which allows the user to connect to a live operator. This would be a court staff and potentially an interpreter. And that may not need to be right there in the courthouse. So that's a good option for those who are teleworking, or if you want to have additional assistance be provided at the lobby.
Paula, just in case anybody wants to share this information with their district, is there a limit on how many Claras you have, or could other areas also request a Clara at this point?
We'd like to encourage the courts that are interested in this to reach out to us, and we'll try to work as there's a budget impact for us, right? So we'll work with the courts to try to expand. We're interested in expanding this, also in utilizing kiosks to provide a window to our courts in other areas that might be, as we were talking about, like a library, right, or a domestic violence center, for example, where litigants don't necessarily need to come to the courthouse, but we're enhancing access because they can browse forms, they can do all sorts of things and connect with the courts remotely through a kiosk.
Thank you, Paula. And sorry, I don't know what's going on with the sound today, but any of those recordings that aren't already in the materials, if you like, we can include those in another email. Were there any other questions for Paula before I stop the recording?
Hey, Paula, this is Nicole from the 9th. I have a question about our domestic violence shelter that we have here. They're always asking for help with the DV forms, and we don't have a person designated specifically to help with DV forms in our court. I do have the self-help center, which we do help some in that, but I'm just one person. And so would it be possible for them to request a Clara?
I think that would be fantastic. We're very interested in collaborating with other partners like that to provide access to our courts. It doesn't have to be the standing kiosk. We actually were looking at a countertop type kiosk that's, you know, smaller profile. Maybe that's a better fit. for certain areas. It could be for a self-help center. It could be for a domestic violence shelter. But Nicole, if you don't mind sending me and Peggy or either one an email, I would love to have that conversation with you.
Okay, great. I will make a note and get an email sent to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.